Here's the lead from NBC News this week. Former President Donald Trump may skip the first Republican debates this summer. That's according to people, quote, aware of his thinking. So the current frontrunner for the Republican nomination skipping out on the debate process seems like a bad thing, right?
I come back to those debates. Maybe Trump won't do one or the second of them, but I think we're going to have a lot more sense as to where this race is going because of what Jen just said. Either DeSantis can confront Trump on that stage and be an equal or best him on that stage and show to primary voters, I can take this guy out, or he can't. And I think we'll know a lot after that.
Yeah. And then there's this sort of more existential question about the import of the debates in terms of the actual election, right? We were talking about watching the old Clinton-Trump footage, which for some people, and maybe you, is like PTSD material.
Yes, yeah.
Do they matter? I mean, because I think a lot of people watch those debates and we're like, she's mopping the floor with him, and then he goes on to become the president.
The country will watch and they'll think it's creepy, what he's doing. And in fact, no. They matter if you are coming from behind and you have a moment that goes viral on social media and you can raise a bunch of money from it. Or because you have a moment that goes viral on social media and people take a second look at you. But what Trump has said about why he doesn't want to do the debate, ignore all the stuff about Fox and the hosts and all of that. To me, what stood out to me was about him saying he has an insurmountable lead. Now, that may be this moment. To Jonathan's point, that may not be the case in a few months. And also that you do debates when you're behind and you don't do them when you're ahead. That's not exactly true, but I think it's reflective of the point that unless you're behind, that's when you want to take somebody on and prove yourself and get a second look from voters or have a viral moment and raise money.
Well, so the shorthand, I think, or the between the lines I'm reading, like it matters more for Ron DeSantis to show up to that debate. Even if he's debating with a microphone, he's got to show up.
Exactly. For exactly the reason that Jonathan said. Now, Ron DeSantis has chosen to date not to attack Donald Trump. When you are on the debate stage, if you do not attack the guy who's ahead of you, that stands out. That does not look strong. Also, that's a moment when people are looking and seeing, can he take him on? Is he a better alternative? Is he as fierce as the guy we like? And if you don't do that, people take notice.
Does DeSantis know that he needs to attack Trump, Jonathan?
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, I think that once you get in the fray with a political actor like Donald Trump, who does not sort of adhere to the traditional boundaries of political decorum, I think he recognizes he's going to have to sort of scrap, and he's not going to be able to keep any kind of polite distance from Trump. Now, the question is, how do you do that smartly? You don't want to get trapped in the mud with him, which some of the 2016 candidates famously did when they were running against Trump in that primary. So you want to keep some level, slightly at least above the sort of ground, but you want to make darn sure that you're confronting him, and that is no easy task. How do you not stoop to his level, but still come out the victor in a head-to-head challenge against Trump in a debate? It is not necessarily that easy, but I think that those viral moments are going to be what last. It's not the hour-and-a-half debate itself. It's whatever the moment is that stands out. You think about that famous episode, guys, where Rubio and Christie in New Hampshire in 2016 went at it. And that was devastating to Rubio because it got played over and over and over again online and on TV in the days after that. And I think those are the kind of moments that DeSantis will need. Or, by the way, somebody else, a third candidate who's not had a moment yet, who could use one of these debates to really stand out. And just real fast, I had a column last week about Trump and his question about debates. He is wrestling with this, and he's surveyed the members of the Florida House delegation while they were having dinner at Mar-a-Lago a couple weeks ago and said, one by one, around the table, should I debate? And I think the majority at that table, guys, said you probably should because they're all going to gang up on you, and you may as well be there to defend yourself on stage that night. And so I think Trump ultimately will show up.
That's the most Trump thing ever. Survey a bunch of people and then do the opposite of what they suggest until you reverse yourself again.